Hello, and welcome to the Decking Awesome podcast. My name is Owen, and I'm joined by the awesome Ciara and Brian.
Hello.
Hey.
Today we're talking about Gaelcon 2021, an awesome RPG convention in Ireland. This year the convention was virtual, hosting all sorts from Dungeons & Dragons to newly created systems. We had a great time with all these creative events. It felt really good to geek out with everyone who attended. Ciara, you were actually one of the lead organisers of the event and did a fantastic job with it. How was the event for you?
Well, I had a great time. It was a really good experience to work with lots of people who are very passionate about RPGs in Ireland and to get involved in the board game community. It was a little difficult to build up the same level of enthusiasm as an in-person event usually has, because it was virtual and it's probably the last of the fully virtual events, hopefully, fingers crossed, that we're going to have. And it just meant that people have kind of got virtual fatigue a little bit. So it took a little more work to get people enthusiastic for it. But there were so many games run and so many events still happened. And I guess a lot more panels and things that might not have been an option in person. So there were some advantages to it.
Yeah, because I think RPGs have a little bit of a handy trick that so many people during COVID have taken up role-playing games and Dungeons & Dragons because of Zoom and stuff like that you can now do D&D with your friend in Australia or stuff like that. So it's not as bad as, say, a board game convention, which has those trickiness of, you're playing a computer game almost on Zoom. But the RPGs at least feel a little bit more natural.
I suppose with the board games, you're reliant on your version of the game already being online. Yeah. At least with the RPGs, if you want to do kind of theater of the mind, or you want to just tell a story and have people sit there and roll dice in front of them, it works quite well. So
yeah, I really enjoyed Gaelcon.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to see more board game events, but it was a real struggle. To be fair to the Dublin Gamers, they organised some really great events. And because I was organising staffing, I couldn't attend any of them. So I think there's a little bit of irony there in that would be the thing I most wanted to attend. But due to the timing and when they were running, I actually couldn't. And I worry that it might lead to there being less events. But they run really great events. So I was really disappointed that I couldn't make any of them. It would be great to see more like industry partners, I guess, involved in that sort of thing, because like Ireland is lucky that we actually do have a board game manufacturing company, a big one, and a few small board game designers who work here and get games manufactured. So it's not like there's no community there at all.
Cardamundi is the big manufacturer. And we also have like big video game developers like John Romero in Galway. He does Doom. He used to do Doom. He's really, really popular. But I know he's a computer game developer. But yeah, there's a lot of cool Irish stuff out there that could be promoters of such a cool event like this.
Exactly. And like overall, it was really nice to be part of the community. Like you really I can't complain. There's a lot of history with this event. It's really big. I'm only recent, I think since it's gone virtual, I've volunteered at it. So, and gotten involved, mostly because it's on a really unusual weekend. And it has an award-winning charity auction, which I thought was really cool. So, fair play to them. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure to get the event right. And hopefully it will flow over into a great event next year as well.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what it's like back to reality, back to in-person.
Yeah, it'll be so strange to be back at in-person conference or conventions again.
Yeah, weird.
I can't wait for it. I'm sick of looking at a screen, if we're being honest. But I'm glad Gaelcon has wrapped this up for virtual conventions. It was a good one to finish on.
Yeah, we started doing face-to-face Dungeons & Dragons actually with our group after going from virtual. So it's weird to go back to the normal or the new normal. Brian, you also attended a convention. How'd you get on?
I really liked it. Now, I wasn't as heavily involved as Ciara, but I was lucky enough to be invited to be a panelist on 2 of the talks on board game design and getting a board game made and up and out there and some of the difficulties that you might face. I didn't, unfortunately, with other work commitments, I only kind of got to attend one RPG and missed a lot of the talks, but some of the ones that we were able to see were absolutely brilliant. I had a great time. I've never been a panelist before for a talk show, so it was a very interesting experience. I really enjoyed it. It's great to have people think that I know a lot about stuff, because that doesn't happen often. And once you get to know me, that that happened even less. But it was fun to have a load of strangers think that I was an expert at this.
Harsh.
Self-harsh.
Yes, some of the talks you were in were the world of Irish board game design, which is really interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the world of Irish board game design was a great one, where we were kind of talking about all the services and helps and supports that are there for upcoming designers or people who have an idea for a board game or are interested in getting into the board game design. I had Robin and Jack with me, who've both released games as well, and it was a fantastic panel talking about, you know, all the stuff we'd gone through and how we got from a hand-drawn cardboard prototype to a final released product and everything that's involved, you know, the grants and stuff that are supported or that are there to support artists. You know, the community that's there is my all-time favorite one. The Board Game Designers Ireland, I think they're on Facebook still, which will hopefully be meeting up again soon. It'll be a great way to get back and start prototyping. But myself and the two lads, there was some great ideas thrown out there, some really good tips and helpful advice. I think the panels are all up on YouTube now, if I'm right in saying that.
I think they're going up soon, so there's going to be some post-event spin for it.
They just have to beep all of the curses.
Yes, there is some sort of post-editing going on.
So possibly by the time this comes out or you're listening to this, they might already be on YouTube, but as of time of recording, they're not currently.
Yeah, Ciara and I attended that as well, and it was really interesting to see the different approaches that you, Robin and Jack had on releasing board games. And like, some went with publishers, some went with creating their own, and it's interesting to see how that affected, in a specific Irish way, board game design.
And even the marketing, the different ways, like Robin's just keep making free things to get people in. And then when you've got a good idea, you can kind of get to know it, because you can't tell what the market's going to be like. I like that idea. I like his
That's very clever, yeah.
Yeah. Jack tapped into a lot of the things like Immert and stuff like that, the organizations that already exist in Ireland.
Yeah, it was very good. Like, even to be able to, there was a few different people as well who've done a lot of advertising online, and we talk about kind of the advantages and disadvantages of that, where you advertise and how you advertise. And, you know, you think once you've made the game, that's it, that's you done and dusted, the rest is easy street. But that's where the difficulties just begin. So we talked a bit about that as well, and kind of covered, you know, what's the best way to approach it, and a few other kind of tips for dealing with the headache that is trying to sell the game after you've made the game. So it's well worth a watch if you're listening to this. Hopefully you are interested in board game design, but there's a few more good tips there, and from another perspective from Robin and Jack as well, that, you know, other than just listening to me all the time.
Yeah, there's another panel as well you were part of, which is more to do with the problems that can occur, which is tabletops and tribulations.
Tabletops and Tribulations was a great name for it. Yes, I was joined on that panel by Dennis and Manuel, both of whom, Manuel, who's released games, Dennis, who used to work for the company that made Magic the Gathering, if I'm right. Yeah, I'm not. Apologies, Dennis, if you're listening, for forgetting briefly. But that was a very interesting panel as well. There we kind of focused more on, you know, some of the difficulties that we face, you know, things like Brexit and access to conventions and cost and, you know, distribution, stuff like that, and some of the ways to overcome the difficulties you face. So the first one, we talked a lot about the supports and community that was there for you, and the second one was kind of more about, here's some of the hurdles you might hit, and here's kind of how we got around them, and here's some things that you might find make them a bit easier. COVID and everything has been a big hindrance on little board game designers like ourselves, where, you know, you need to get out there and play test and promote. You know, it'd be great to have a €2 million budget for marketing where you can just blast the new game all over everywhere and have people know about it and then want to buy it. But for us, you know, we were very dependent on going to conventions and promoting there and doing local grassroots stuff. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Thank you.
Yeah.
Here we kind of talked more about, you know, what was involved and, you know, different ways to go about it and how we've kind of gotten around the difficulties that COVID has posed and Brexit and everything else.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time right now for board game development and marketing and stuff like that. So yeah, that panel was incredible. But yeah, it's not just your talks, Brian, that were part of Gaelcon. There's a lot of other big talks done. One of them was mythologies and misrepresentation, which I found really engaging. It's mostly talks about Irish or Native American histories and how they're kind of used in RPGs. and how it's about the effort people put into the work. Slapping a leprechaun on something and calling it Irish is lazy, and being lazy just isn't good enough when it comes to role-playing games, because
probably more accurately Irish than just slapping a leprechaun on it.
So yeah, like they talk about it a lot, and it's a very interesting time as well, because Ireland has quite a lot of our mythologies are still present in their culture and how we speak and stuff like that. The talk also talked about how English rural mythologies has kind of waned and they've lost a lot of their mythologies. And so it was a very great talk to hear about people incorporating all of these things into RPGs and kind of keeping them alive for this kind of new generation of RPG players, but also keeping it sensitive so that leprechauns aren't just wearing big top hats and a green
fiddly-dee potatoes.
Yeah. So very, very cool. Very, very interesting, engaging talk, I thought.
I thought what was really good was they got kind of a few different people from different, like I think somebody had a good cultural knowledge of the Scandinavian cultures and myths and histories, but like I guess we can all relate to the Irish mythology and its misuse in different places. I think it did bring up some really interesting things on how the RPG world started out. It hacked together many myths and legends and made everyone fight each other, and kind of had a certain racist element to it as far as like elves and orcs and stuff go, and how they're trying to come out of that. I thought that was a very interesting way of looking at it. They're trying to diversify the cultures that they have, and a lot of their newer books have a bit more depth to the characters. And even like they recently had the Fey Wilds and stuff, and they've added, D&D has added a bit more information and histories to that are kind of more relevant than they previously would have. I thought it's interesting that rather than just throwing everything out or trying to make things better, but yeah, there's a lot of times where people just throw in mythologies and don't do any research and make it really horrible.
Yeah, really lazy. Like the one thing they talk about was the Shadowrun, which I've never played Shadowrun, but they talk about how there's a Celtic underworld run by Leprechaun IRA, and it's not very sensitive. But at the same time, I haven't played it, so it might be.
We on the Decking Awesome podcast tolerate no racism towards orcs, elves, or any race or species.
Or any other real life race or species.
Or human, yes. We tolerate none of them either.
Wait, elves aren't real?
That's the exact kind of stereotype we're trying to get away from.
And another great big talk that we attended was the content creative process, which is about writers doing their profession. You attended as well, Ciara, didn't you?
I did. I found it very interesting. I think actually, obviously the podcast comes into it too, just trying to put together pieces and hearing what other people do, because you really find that it seems easy enough to put together these things when you're on the outside looking in. And then when you start trying to do something like write our own RPG that me and Owen have started into, you can really struggle. And then Owen having to come up with podcast scripts and ideas and stuff. And just the struggles. It's nice, first of all, to hear of other people struggling with the same thing. They had some tips and interesting things about their own creative process that I found good. What about you?
I really liked it. It especially touched in, obviously it helped us a lot because we were writing an RPG at the moment, but it also touched on if you're trying to make this a profession, trying to make it actually your life's work, which is how do you make money out of writing, which is really tricky. Obviously with our RPG, it's our side project rather than our actual profession, which gives us a little bit more leeway into doing it when we have the creative juices flowing rather than forced to, because it's, 9 p.m. on a Thursday and you have to get something done. And so, yeah, the creative process is different for different people and people make money out of it different ways. Definitely a great talk to look at if you want to learn more about that and you want to become a writer yourself.
Yeah, and I think that they touch on a lot of the modern ways to make money out of it as well. Like there was discussions on how well and how badly Patreon can be run and things like that, where
Twitch streaming,
Twitch streaming, things that are newer forms of monetization and how they're helping or hindering the creative world. So having that information is really, really handy to anyone who might be thinking of setting up their own podcast or their own RPG. If they're going to be writing a lot of them, what you might do.
And like sometimes the best way to get the creative juices flowing is a bit of adrenaline. So if you're robbing a bank, you're making money. You're getting the creative juices going. It's win-win.
You're going to fail robbing the bank if you start writing a novel halfway through.
Well, I mean,
you're in the safe. You're like,
voice notes. That's what they're
true.
Just little headset connected to a dictaphone. Boom.
Yeah, and then record yourself robbing, and then also saying exactly how you did it as you're robbing.
We don't advocate robbing banks unless it's for creative purposes.
And you give the money back.
Some of the money. But yeah, Gaelcon obviously is not just about the big talks, which are really helpful and fun for people to entertain, but there's also the RPGs, which are the biggest part of it. Luckily, I didn't have to go to a big talk, or I didn't have to be a panelist, or I didn't have to organize it. And so I got to go to loads of the RPGs in Gaelcon. I tried to go to as many as I could. It was really, really fun. They're all so well done, and everyone has a real joy for it. A lot of them were like previous organizers of the conventions, and they wanted to get more time. So it looks like people kind of flick back and forth between being game masters and organizers. But yeah, it was just really great to nerd out with everybody. Let's talk about some of the RPGs we got into. Let's start off with the one that all three of us attended at the same time, Fey Earth.
Oh, that was a really good one. I enjoyed that.
That was really good, yeah.
That was DM'd by Lloyd, who did an absolutely amazing job. He really brought it to life. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I think he was perfect in his bringing it to life without getting stuck on the rules or trying to, force us to do things that we didn't want to do. He allowed us it had a very open world feel to it. There was enough plot to keep us compelled to be interested and to want to see to the end. There was a lot going on. It was really, really interesting and a system that I had never used before. I don't know if either of the two of you had.
No, and it was a strange one. It was similar enough to D&D, but it was like, I mean, it was interesting that you could really ramp up your spells. That you what was it, mana points or something like that you used to cast your spells. But if you wanted to cast like a super power spell, you can just burn all your mana in one spell. I mean, it's not very tactical, but like if you just need that big push to finish the fight, it's a great way to do it. Yeah. And then after that, you're just standing there with no magic, throwing small little daggers at people.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it, because I was worried. It was a unique D20 system that Lloyd was DMing, and it was kind of advertised as a steampunk fantasy realm. And then when we got there, we went into the English town of Carlisle and started talking to different manufacturers, and there's bread and there's wood and there's all sorts of different kind of real, like classic kind of manufacturers there. And it turns out that all those places in Carlisle are real, and a lot of the mythologies he was talking about were real. And that kind of fed into the whole the big talk of mythologies and stuff like that. This wasn't lazy. This was like really thought of to kind of bring everything together. What would magic look like in real Carlisle?
Very little steam and almost non-existent punk.
You could be punk if you wanted.
You guys suppose, yeah.
However, the name of the scenario, very apt.
Yes.
Fey Earth.
Fey Earth, yeah. And yeah, it actually talks a lot about the classic mythologies in England at that time. And it was really, really fun. I definitely recommend, if anybody has a chance to play Fey Earth, definitely give it a go. Lots of role-playing in it, lots of investigation and talking to different characters all around town. And it had a beautiful quality of, there's this kind of lantern festival that was occurring during the RPG. And as you were going through town and investigating this crime that happened, people were celebrating the Lantern Festival and things were happening. And it felt real. It felt kind of like you could get interacted with it. And so Lloyd did a great job of kind of interweaving all of these thematic elements into it and then bring it all to a crescendo at the end. Obviously, we don't have to say what happened at the end, but it was cool.
It was a very good end.
It was. Actually, I say it was a really good end. I had to leave to be on a panel. And these two still haven't told me what happened at the end of it.
Well, we're not going to tell you now.
Well, so fellow listener, I join you in suspense at not knowing what happened.
It was very culty. There was demons involved. And yeah, I don't know if we can say more.
Yeah.
We were relatively successful. But yeah, I definitely think like even just the flexibility of being able to talk to people and having a lot of characters in the background that you could interact with, but you didn't have to, made it very enjoyable. That it wasn't just like, this is the only person around, so this is the only person you can talk to.
Yeah, it seemed very well written that, even some random passerby you could stop, and there was a story or a little hint or something there for you. So I actually don't know who wrote it, but kudos to whoever did. They were very thorough with it.
Yeah, and I liked the different types of characters. It felt a little reminiscent of a lot of fantasy. You had the mage and the healer and the fighter, but people had enough skills inside their character sheets to be able to actually use their characters in a non-combat way. So lots of utility ways of using their abilities, which I always love in role-playing games, because our group, when we play D&D, almost never gets into combats. Even though you can put 20 orcs in front of them and say you're about to start attacking them, they'll find a way to not get into combat and convince those orcs to be on their side somehow.
I like the combats.
Half the group likes the combats. And even those half of the group who like the combats still, for some reason, try and avoid it all.
Yeah, it's way more fun if you see a dragon and you're like, all right, and the dragon says, let's do this, and then you don't do this. Very satisfying.
By the way, the schedule says it was Neil who wrote it.
Thank you, Neil.
It was very good.
It was very good, very enjoyable.
I think it was great to have that, because we were all kind of stressed out as well, organizing and doing panels and stuff like that. And it was great for Lloyd to kind of run us through that. I thought it was a great way to de-stress.
Yeah, definitely. Just I had the time scheduled off and I just got to relax and actually enjoy a bit of the convention. So that was really good.
The first RPG, these are a lot of the ones I ran into. First RPG I went to was called Silhouettes, Hall of the Mountain King, which was run by Max. And I have to say, it was probably my favorite RPG of the convention. It uses a single D20 and his own custom RPG rules. And the idea is you are people with special powers. So my power was I can create any weapon out of fire. Okay. And another person could control the wind. And you were facing off against people who were
trying to destroy the planet. With your powers combined.
It's not all elemental powers, but yeah, mostly elemental powers. But the enemies you're facing had different powers as well. But you're always it was always the group against one person. And obviously you can't really do that in D&D, because the more players you add, the action economy doesn't work. And so the whole thing breaks down. But Max's system makes it incredibly entertaining for a group of people to go up against one person, because it's a battle against the powers. So they're, the bad guy is trying to kill you while trying to defend against your special powers, and you're trying to figure out their weak point. So a guy comes up, I'll ruin the first guy anyway, because it's just really funny. A guy comes up called Nutmeg, and he's this big kind of jock, and he's beating up this kid, and he can turn invisible, And so that's the first guy you face in the adventure, and it's really fun. And so you try and you create a sword or a whip or something. You try and whip him, and the whip goes through him because he can turn invisible, or he can turn transparent. I can't remember what the word is for that. And you have to figure a way of using your abilities, or trying to figure out what his weak point is. Turns out his weak point is he's allergic to nuts. But your HP is everyone has 3 HP.
Yeah.
And so as Nutmeg starts attacking you, he only ever does 1 damage. So that 3 HP is pretty much you have 3 turns.
Yeah.
If Nutmeg keeps hitting you, you have 3 turns. So I was down to 1 HP. The one who has the wind was flying in the air. She started taking some damage. As we were just trying to figure this out, I was using my shield to protect the kid. It was really fun. And it was really, because there's I think it was played for 3 hours, and we fought maybe 6 people. And so there's 6 very unique enemies that have to be beaten in different ways. And it's not just allergic to nuts. It's I won't get into it, but they're really cool. If you've ever seen Cowboy Bebop or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it feels a lot like that, or Dragon Ball Z or something like that. There's always it's a competition where two equally powered people are trying to get the weakness. Very, very fun. I can't wait to see more adventures by Max.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
He hasn't released his RPG yet, but he will at some point.
Oh, we'll keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The next one was called Discord Has Ghosts in It. You sent me onto this, Ciara, which was...
I did.
It's recommended by a lot of people. And the idea is it uses Discord to create the RPG. And it was a very novel system, very cool. The fact that you could get a group of, I think it was 6 people we had, and we were all part of the same Discord channel, and we were creating new channels in Discord, and that was creating new rooms in the house that people could discover. And so half of them were ghosts and half of them were investigators. And the investigators had to figure out why the ghosts were dead and try and put them to rest. And so, we were leading the people from the hallway up to the bedroom, up to the kitchen, into the bathroom. And then when they go into the bathroom, the doors close, water starts seeping out of the pipes. And then you start to see a dead woman in the mirror, all that kind of stuff. You're trying to freak people out in Discord as they're trying to investigate it. And it's really fun to see the investigators start off by saying, this is a normal house. Oh, it's just the flickering lights. There's probably something wrong with the electronics, all that kind of stuff. And then slowly it becomes like, okay, this axe is covered in blood. We need to get out of here. This is haunted. It was very, very fun. I liked it a lot. We struggled as ghosts to end it. I think that was a big problem. Obviously, this is still in the draft, so they're still working on it. But we, as the ghosts, we couldn't figure out how to put the ghosts to rest, how to give the investigators what they needed to kind of put us to rest. Because the investigators figured out the ghosts in about an hour and a half, about 2 hours. So it was very quick and very entertaining. But then they ended up just not being able to figure out how to, because we didn't give ourselves a backstory to kind of resolve. Yeah. So they ended up just setting fire to the house.
Well, if I can't solve these ghosts, may as well just burn them out.
Yeah. I really I liked it a lot. I definitely played again. Knowing what I know now, I would just give myself a more resolvable ghost background.
And did you feel like you got to create your ghost background, did you?
Yeah.
And did you feel very linked to it then?
Yeah, I liked it. I think we obviously the Three Ghosts, this is our first time playing it. We didn't two of us were game masters before, like me, but we didn't really know what we're trying to do, the story we were trying to tell. But if we knew it now, we would do it. For some reason, I got locked into my head that I wanted to be buried underground and have been killed by a family member or buried alive by a family member. That's very hard to resolve. I don't know how you resolve that.
I don't know. I've seen Kira sometimes thinking about doing that to you.
But it was really fun to roleplay it. It was really fun to kind of pretend it happens. Yeah, I liked it. And yeah, the next one was No Job Too Small, which is the only D&D RPG I taught on Gaelcon, which was great to see. I love seeing new systems, and throughout Gaelcon, it was great to see all sorts of cool new systems being played. But No Job Too Small was the Dungeons and Dragons done by Sean Donnelly, and he created a really interesting Dungeons and Dragons adventure. Very tropey, but he kind of broke the tropes as well in a great way. It had dragons, it had dungeons, treasures and traps. I don't know if you've ever seen the Witcher episode where they start off in a tavern and there's a lot of people trying to get the dragon or dragon egg or something like that. I can't remember what episode that is.
Yeah. At the end. Yeah.
And you see all the groups in the tavern. It's a lot like that. Except for our group wasn't like the Witcher at all. Our group was like the mingle social group. Because we ended up talking to every group and getting ins and just figuring stuff out. And it was really fun. But we ended up spending way too long in that tavern. Like the tavern was obviously meant as an intro. 5 minutes, you're out, you're going into the dungeon. But we spent an hour there talking to the rat folk, the goblins, the dwarves, the paladins, everybody. And we're just messing with them all. And we're taking the maps from the goblins and stuff like that and replacing it with other ones and stuff. It was just great to RPG with a bunch of people who knew the rules for Dungeons & Dragons and just were having a good, fun time. And fair play to Sean Donnelly for actually being able to handle just people who are just messers,
How do you find it compared to so we don't often do short once-offs. Even the once-offs we do are usually 2 sessions long, bar Brian's holiday-themed adventures.
Christmas and Halloween ones, yeah.
Yeah, how did you find they compared to long campaigns? And
I think it worked because, one-shots are notoriously never one-shots. They always keep going. But I think the key that Sean Donnelly figured out, and I don't know if he did this intentionally or not, is that if you give the map of the dungeon to the players, they can visually see how long it's going to take. And they can kind of give themselves time saying, all right, this is a one-shot. When we need to get through this dungeon, so I'm going to give myself enough time. So they'll hurry themselves up. Whereas if they don't know how big the dungeon is, they'll just take their time.
That's an interesting approach, yeah.
Just tell them show them how long it's going to take without showing them anything, I
suppose, yeah, there's no... unless you have hidden rooms and stuff like that, there's no real reason that you can't give someone a dungeon. Because, if you're walking into a room, you don't know, is it going to be the last one? Is it just going to be another room before the next room? Or
yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't give away traps and things like that. All that stuff and monsters can be added. Yeah, that's a very good way of counting it down.
And I just love the fact that you can inhabit a character pretty quickly in that tavern. And then obviously once the tavern scene was done, it was mostly combat, traps, that kind of stuff, figuring things out, problem solving. And then, but the thing is, in that dungeon, obviously the other groups, the rat folk and the paladins, they were all going through as well. And so your choices in the tavern kind of mattered. So it was great, 2 separate parts to it, tavern and the dungeon. Yeah, I'd definitely do it again. It's a very cool concept.
Sounds really interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
And were you saying there was some sort of card game in it?
Yeah, it was an interesting one because we started the RPG, went into the tavern, and there's dwarves playing poker. And one of the players was like, I want to play poker too. And so the DM had to come up with rules to play poker, which is great. And it was pretty much blackjack, except for you have to get to 12. And so you roll a d8, and you want to hit, and you roll a d6, and then you hit, roll a d4, and whoever gets the lowest wins. A really great idea. I don't know if you came up with it or just had it on hand. But
It's very clever all the same. Is it?
Yeah, very good. Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely recommend No Job Too Small. I don't know if it's available. It felt like a really fleshed out adventure. It's probably finished. Definitely worth it. And it's definitely a one shot. You could definitely get 3 hours, you're done. Don't spend too much time in the tavern though.
Just playing poker with dwarves.
Yeah. And Kira, those are all my RPGs. I don't know. I'm sorry for taking up all the time, but that was really fun. I love Gaelcon for all the RPGs. And you also attended an RPG, didn't you?
I did. So on the Friday night, there was a little bit more time and there was a few people staffing. So I guess we had extra people on for the start of the event because people logging in and everything, that's, when you're more likely to have the need of people. But once everything had settled down, there was a few spaces left in the assassination of King Fabian the Kind. And I got to play, which absolutely was so much fun. It used really interesting, I think it was a homebrew version of a White Wolf system. Now, don't quote me on that because, first of all, my head was filled with Gaelcon stuff to start with. So it took me a little bit of time to figure out what was going on. But I really loved, they had abilities and attributes and you combine them to decide what dice you rolled. And I just found that was a lovely, interesting spin. So in D&D, there's like so many stats. There's investigation and I know they're like wisdom, nature, say, and you have to combine. And this was just like really flexible in that you combine them on the fly. So you can go like, oh, I'm doing something dexterous, but like it's dexterous with like a kind of a brawling element. So I combined those 2 attributes and I found I got very distracted by the novelty of that combinations, but it was a really good story. We were obviously trying to assassinate King Fabian. It was very clear.
King Fabian the Kind. You're trying to murder
he
the
wasn't
nicest
as kind
king
as his title. He was bringing imbalance to the universe, or at least the town. So yeah, we did. It was really good. We had some interesting planning. A lot of it was just like planning how to get into the castle, and I enjoyed it. We did a lot of it felt like there was like a whole like brainstorming element and then an actual doing element, and then for some reason we made some very bad decisions to split the party, but we had a lot of fun with it and everyone got to get involved and everyone pitched in and did unusual things. It was just really, really good, and the DM, who I can't remember the name of, which is very bad, was really, really great at like making sure that everyone got to do stuff, and it was just really enjoyable.
It was a Roland Cooper?
Roland, yeah, sorry. And Roland does loads of DMing actually at Gaelcon as well, but it just, the name slipped my mind completely there for a second.
There's a lot of people.
But the only thing that was a little bit disappointing is that we did go over a bit because we started late, I guess because staff from the convention were joining. It meant that we started a little bit past the hour, so we did have to cut it short. But even that, Roland did a very clever thing in that he kind of let us get a little bit creative with the last battle, so that the second last battle was like our last battle, and then the last battle just wrapped up. And I thought that was really, really flexible of him to kind of make it still feel like we had to overcome a really big obstacle at the end and get it all done. It was really great.
I like the comboing of, yeah, like, because if you're trying to do something dexterous stealthily, to be able to combine the skills is an interesting feature rather than it having to be one or the other. And
yeah, and I think so it is a system out there, but I think the homebrew element was just to tidy up that system and make it a little bit easier to play in a short form. So that helped.
Yeah, because some systems are much more suited for conventions and one shots than others. Yeah, I think
because one of your games wouldn't have suited us like a long campaign. And
yes, well, like Silhouette's my favorite one. You can definitely do it for a longer campaign, but I don't think it's designed for that. I think it's designed for like really quick combat encounters and trying to figure things out. But you could definitely, because it's an RPG with very little systems involved, you can still kind of role play. I create like a whip or whatever, and I'm doing it like an RPG thing. Like you can still use your powers outside of combat and have an RPG adventure because of the lack of kind of rules. So yeah, it's good. I think the less rules you have for a convention, the better. Sometimes it can be like a very daunting experience.
Yeah, too much to learn in like learning it and then playing it. But I definitely think the GMs at the event really put in the effort to try and simplify all the systems so that they played for a shorter thing. And I think that's one of the keys to having those sort of 4-hour sessions is if you do have a complicated system, have a DM that knows how to not pay attention to the complications if it's not necessary.
Yeah, because that was the Feyert was the tricky one. There's a lot of detail in that, and it wasn't Dungeons & Dragons. It was a custom homebrew D20 system. And so people were trying to pick their stuff at the start. And like Lloyd was just saying, just pick whatever you feel. You want to be a brawler, pick a brawler. You want to be a mage, pick a mage. Don't worry too much about the specifics, and I'll just help you as you go along. And Lloyd helped us throughout the whole way. But I could see that system being great for a longer campaign.
Yeah.
I suppose we're getting more used to your character and you're using all the features of it rather than just like a blitz of the town or whatever you're in.
Yeah, because I think it had cool magic system ideas that were created in there, and it gave you more freedom than say Dungeons and Dragons. I'd like to see a longer version of it, but it's tricky. I just want to play more RPGs, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There are some other non-RPG events that happened. We went to one of them, Kira and me.
Yeah.
Which was Jog Brogson's fantasy map making.
Yes, a really brilliant event. I have to say that. So I guess, as I said, we're doing our campaigns and map making comes up, funnily enough, in how to convey to people where they are and where they're going. So it was automatically eye-catching for the two of us in the schedule. And then the event itself was so interesting. And we made maps in it, many maps. So I think is it Yog or I'm Yog? He has been making maps for 30 years. So he's very experienced at it and he does a really good job. So actually in the charity auction, they auctioned off some of his maps and they were really, really interesting. Like he had one of Ireland that was really fascinating. And so he does a lot of custom work, but this was like 2 hours, learn to make maps. And he kind of started off with 30 minutes of like tutorial that was really, really like, here's what a barrel would look like from the top down. And here's the options for walls and things like that. And kind of like almost like a basic skill set to get you going.
It was really interesting. You should be able to see the map making ones that we did in Instagram actually when this goes live. But yeah, he made it really simple and clear on how to make maps. So maps for inside houses, maps for in caves, maps for like traversing over water, and then like different elevations and stuff. And it's such a simple and easy way to do it that we created at least 2 each, everybody in the group, and then everyone combined theirs into one big map at the end. And it was just awesome to see like going through like stables and seeing like horses and then going into a cave and then coming out and like over a bridge. And it was just it was kind of funny, but also the system that he created works really well. And it looks stylized and kind of really nice. And you could see players in like Dungeons & Dragons or any RPG kind of traversing this and being like, who made this crazy house?
This giant cube of...
Yeah, really, really fun. And yeah, it gives you ideas as well. So like, because Kira was saying this as well when during the map making, sometimes you can get like caught in your own head of like, I have this dungeon and I have all of these traps that I want the players to go into. And so you are either cramming everything into a small area or you're trying to put it in too far. And with Yog's system, you kind of just deal with one thing in a one square. And then you kind of build that trap that you're trying to work on. And then you go over there and you build a combat encounter over here. And so you can kind of segment it in your head much easier. And it makes actually laying out a map much better.
Yeah, I think the endless issue of that blank page in a creative process of like, I have to get all of this stuff and I have to do it all and in this. And it was a really nice way to segment the creative boundaries, of just like, okay, I just have to focus on that one bit that I need to do for this. And the maps came out so well. Obviously, he has a lot more tips and tricks for his maps because they're really, really beautifully detailed and everything like that. But I definitely felt like our maps came out really, really well over the course of 2
they
hours.
looked great. Even the ones I saw you had here, and the big collage at the end of it was incredible looking.
It takes you about 25 minutes. So if you are DMing homebrew content, or even like, Curse of Strahd or whatever, and you want to do like an adventure, use Yogg's system. It might, obviously it's not going to look as good as what Yogg would do. His are really nice and beautiful, but it'll work. Your players will go through it and they'll understand exactly what you're trying to show them. You're in a church, it'll look exactly like a church. And that's, I think, the key. Absolutely incredible system. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, he has a site as well. He does custom works and he does generic dungeons as well. So
yeah, he sent us a couple in the post. It was really nice of him, and I can't wait to start using them in some D&D. Yeah, I think I definitely go check him out and buy some of his stuff because they're really cool. Yeah, all you need is a pen and a paper.
It was nice to learn a new skill, like a skill from somebody who's clearly knows a lot about it.
Yeah,
and making triangle shading, which I, for some reason, couldn't figure out how to do triangles for a few minutes, and then managed it.
I did the same thing. My first wall was like, I don't know, what am I doing? And then after a while, it's like, oh, and it's like, this is professional. I know what I'm doing. It's great. It's a skill you can pick up pretty quickly. And it worked really well over Zoom because like you could see what he was doing, and then you could also see what everyone else is doing, and then you could also have a chat. It worked really well with Zoom.
Yeah, and people could comment on like, oh, I tried to do this and it didn't work, or ooh, I'm trying to add an extra feature, or almost trying to do a water, and then like, having that natural conversation made it like interesting to hear about other people's maps and things. It was great.
You can post it on Discord and then everyone gets to see it and everyone comments on it as they're just having a cup of tea and kind of settling down. Very relaxed, very entertaining.
One of the talks that really suited the remotes setup.
Yeah. So that pretty much wraps it up for Gaelcon 2021. I can't wait to see you guys in person for Gaelcon 2022, hopefully.
Really looking forward to that.
It's going to be pretty cool. I'm going to do loads of RPGs and not help at all with organising the event.
I'm going to be hopefully promoting the Kickstarter for a new game, so I'll be sitting around cursing Owen if anyone's looking for me.
Well, hopefully, actually, in Gaelcon 2022, we probably should have our RPGs there.
All going well.
Hammer, nail in the coffin. What's that? I can't remember what the saying is, but yeah.
I don't think it's hammer and nail in the coffin.
Hammer and nail in the attendance.
Yeah, we'll definitely have. We'll see.
No, I'm going to say definitely. Make promises.
Okay, make promises we can't
11
keep.
months from now, we should hopefully have written a one-shot.
2 one-shots.
2 one-shots.
Mine's not a one-shot, but yeah, sure.
Okay, 2 chapters of our story.
Yeah, but I can't wait for Gaelcon. It's going to be cool. There's going to be so many more talks as well, and it's going to be great to see all the people in face-to-face. So yeah, if you enjoyed this podcast, share it. We've been decking out some games. Thank you for listening. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.